So we continue to the rest of this chapter. So on page 145, to sum it all up, when a mind free from the three afflictions and seeking one of the three kinds of awakening is employed in practice, what is aspired to will then be attained accordingly. So again, right? For any of these three types of awakening, that of a Shravaka, a hearer, a Pratyeka Buddha, a solitary realizer, a Samnya Sambuddha, a full and complete Buddha, if they are at all awakening, Bodhi, the state of Bodhi, then necessarily they are all free from the kleshas, the afflictive emotions. But the degree and the scope of the three awakenings are different. And of course, in the Mahayana tradition, and Vajrayana is part of Mahayana, in the Mahayana tradition, then we are urged to consider the advantages, the great advantages of aiming for the highest, the third, which is complete and perfect Buddhas for the benefit of all beings. However, here, Gyalpa Rinpoche nonetheless tells us, therefore, or furthermore, or therefore, you could put it either way, furthermore, there is no greater or lesser vehicle in terms of the Dharma and the three collections of scriptures. The three collection of scriptures is a shorthand, or is a way of saying all the different teachings that have been collected and written down and said to have been taught by the Buddha. All these scriptures, and even the Dharma, doesn't really have these labels called a greater vehicle, lesser vehicle, Mahayana, Hinayana. And he says the teachings themselves are teachings for overcoming the three afflictions and the 84,000 afflictions that arise from the three afflictions. And so the Dharma itself, and even the scriptures, even the recorded teachings, he says, they don't divide themselves into, oh, this is lesser vehicle, this is greater vehicle. Rather, it is the intention of the practitioner that determines whether a particular Dharma, a particular practice is greater or lesser. So this is a really, I think, helpful and important approach to the diversity of Buddhist teachings. And we don't even need to go beyond just one cultural context. No need to compare, say, Tibetan Buddhism and Chinese Buddhism, or Chinese Buddhism and Sri Lankan Buddhism, and say, oh, you guys practice this, we practice this. Just within the context of Tibetan Buddhism, often we will encounter things like, oh, this is a more basic teaching, this is more advanced teachings, this is even more advanced, and this is profound, and this is the profound of the profound, and this is the most profound of the most profound. All these things. It's very easy to get carried away. Some of us, I think ooh, profound. Ooh, the profound of the most profound. Ooh, the most profound of the most profound. Right? Then some of us, on the other hand, are intimidated by all of this. Oh, I don't know, all this profound, that I just do the basic. And then you can also get stuck there. I just do the basic. All those things are too profound. We also don't want to be in that kind of situation. So here is very helpful. Gyalpa Rinpoche says, the Dharma itself, what the Buddha taught, right? They are not inherently this vehicle, that vehicle, greater, lesser, This will give result faster, that will give result slower. He says all these designations of great and small, fast and slow, profound and not, all these have to do with the practitioner rather than what is being practiced. So a practitioner who has a very limited scope and working on overcoming the three kleshas, then the result of that is a limited result. But a practitioner who is focused on, again, same thing, removing the three kleshas, but for a great purpose. I want to do this for all beings without exception, for the benefit of all beings without exception. Then the result that arises is correspondingly great. But as for the work of overcoming the kleshas, clearing the mental defilements, in a way you could say it's the same work. The intention, the motivation, and the capacity of the individual to have a greater motivation. That's what makes these teachings separate out into greater vehicle, lesser vehicle, faster way, slower way. Rather, it is the intention of the practitioner that determines what is greater or lesser. Moreover, the three kinds of awakening have one single essence in that they are the mind free from the three afflictions. Consequently, the nature of all the activities of body, speech, and mind is also primordially unborn emptiness. And thus the nature of relative bodhicitta is also emptiness. So this, I think, is a way to wrap back around to how even relative bodhicitta, where the wisdom aspect is more in the background and the love and compassion is more in the foreground, right? Even that, don't think that, wisdom is not necessary. Understanding is not necessary. No, without wisdom, it cannot even be relative bodhicitta. It cannot be bodhicitta. So this realization, this understanding, or at the very least an intellectual understanding and appreciation of what emptiness means is necessary. I hope by now, all of you listening, emptiness doesn't mean nothing. Emptiness is a technical term that means, the absence of permanence, the absence of solidity, the absence of self as a discrete, stand-alone entity. Is there a self? Yes, there is. There is the dependently arising self, meaning a self that is defined by many other factors. Therefore, we say dependent, not independent. Insofar as selves, myself, yourself, themself, his self, herself, insofar as selves exist, it's not that the Buddha is not saying they don't exist. They exist, but they exist in a particular way. They exist in a dependent way, dependent on various conditions, various factors, various causes. And this variety of causes and conditions is what makes self also unsure, uncertain, unstable. And therefore, these types of selves that we can say exist, we should not expect too much from this. Is what it's saying. We should not expect too much from it. Know its limits. Know its functional function. And don't kid yourself into the functionality of such selves into the kind of concretize into the exaggerated self. That what was necessary to kind of help us navigate existing among others turn into a burden. When the commonsensical self turns into the exaggerated self, this is how suffering starts. So this is a little bit, related to what emptiness means. Continuing here, when all activities of body, speech, and mind are governed by relative bodhicitta, they are suitable as actions in the inseparable union of the two kinds of bodhicitta. And so when our body, speech, and mind, everything that we say, think, do, feel, is protected, it's covered by the bodhicitta insurance policy, a comprehensive policy, so to say, then you can say that the inseparability of absolute and relative bodhicitta is present there, meaning there is wisdom. There is not only compassion and loving kindness, but there is also wisdom. Since everything then becomes a cause for unsurpassable awakening, please practice in this way. Since everything then, when you have that understanding, then everything, right? Even when you find yourself in situations where unskillful or unwholesome actions somehow have turned up, if in that moment you can recognize the desire-free emptiness to be more basic than desire, the aversion-free emptiness to be more basic than the aversion that has turned up, the delusion-free emptiness as more basic than the delusion has turned up, if we are able to, in that moment, recognize that. First, of course, maybe just intellectually, that will already save you from a lot of suffering. Then, when it becomes more profoundly from the heart kind of realization, and then it will fully protect you. Then instead, right, instead of causing harm, those temporarily existing attachment, temporarily existing aversion, temporarily existing delusion can be transformed. But again, this chapter also cautions us, but when it comes to skillful and unskillful actions, always draw a clear line. So study the Buddha's instructions on skillful, wholesome, beneficial causes, actions, unskillful, unbeneficial, harmful causes or actions, and know how to choose this and stay away from, and even abandon, throw out, throw down, throw away that which is unskillful and productive of suffering. And so this is the 15th teaching. Let's see if you have any questions or comments. We should start a little bit of chapter 16. Okay, very good. you understand everything perfectly now, then we can proceed to 16. 16 will make reference to 15. This is part of the internal evidence that I use as internal evidence that this is a series of teachings given over a period of a month. So some special month in Jikten Sumgön's life where he taught every day, gave us very short, just gave very short instructions each day. And we know from other sources that the daily schedule at Kyoba Rinpoche's community tended to be a little bit of teachings each day, and then after that, or even before that or after that, because sometimes the teachings happen in the afternoon, before and after, everyone is back in their own space. Focus on training their minds, training their hearts. That they only listen to each day a little bit. No like copious hours spent on reading books and trying to master the ins and the outs of the system, but rather these teachings, again, they are not like philosophical studies. I think we just, like without really understanding what it means, we will say things like, oh, this is Buddhist philosophy. This Buddhist philosophy is so... but it's not philosophy in that sense, as a subject of study, scrutinizing, looking up what this word means, what that word means. Over here, Kyoba Rinpoche uses very simple words. Words and vocabulary that his audience more or less understands, And so we also should approach this collection in this way. That the short teaching is enough, So here it says, the precious Lama taught the following. In general, the Dharma of all Tathagatas, and Tathagatas are Buddhas, in general, the Dharma of all Tathagatas of the 3 times and 10 directions. 10 directions is the 4 cardinal directions, north, south, east, west, or east, south, west, north. Then the intermediate directions, 4 more, that makes 8, up and down. That's how you get 10. Up and down. So the Dharma, the teachings, and the truth and the realization of all Tathagatas of the 3 times and 10 directions, 3 times, past, present, future, is one in being wholesome in the beginning, middle, and end. That all these different teachings, all the things that the Tathagatas have taught in the past, in the present, in the future, in all directions, they are one, there are not many, in terms of them being wholesome in the beginning, skillful in the beginning, skillful in the middle, and skillful at the end. This is also stated in reciting the names of Manjushri, this very common actually recitation called Manjushri Namasankiti. It says, what is wholesome in the beginning, middle, and end was taught by the previous Buddhas, will be taught by the future Buddhas, and is taught again and again by the present Buddhas. This shows that the Dharma of all the Buddhas of the 3 times is one in the following point, which is, what is wholesome in the beginning is likewise wholesome in the middle and also in the end. You can substitute wholesome with skillful, unwholesome with unskillful. So actually here it says, what is unwholesome in the beginning is likewise unwholesome in the middle and unwholesome in the end, unskillful in the end. It is impossible that there is anything unskillful. There's anything unskillful in what is skillful. And it is impossible that there's anything skillful and what is unskillful. One cannot change into the other. So this is more typical of the main way that Kyoba Rinpoche normally teaches. In fact, in one of the Vajra statements, his Vajra statements, he says, what is prescribed by the Buddhas is perpetually prescribed. What the Buddha prescribed for us, what the Buddha encourages us to practice is always the same. What the Buddha proscribed, say, oh no, don't do this because it's harmful. No, don't do this because it's not helpful. That remains perpetually. It doesn't change. It cannot be, 5,000 years ago is trendy. Now 5,000 years later, it is so, inconvenient, so untrendy, no need. And he says, no, it doesn't work like this. What is harmful is always harmful, and what is helpful is always helpful. Now, of course, the tradition is not aware of there are further nuances. And of course, if you look at Kyopa Rinpoche, how he teaches in other contexts, you'll see these nuances coming out. So just like what we covered, seem to not so literally follow this main point. What is wholesome remains always wholesome. What is unwholesome remains unwholesome. The last point says, even non-wholesome, unwholesome actions of body, speech, and mind, unskillful states of mind, becomes a cause for awakening, right? In the last teaching. So that is a very special nuance. And we have to try to understand that very, very carefully. So here, he goes back to his usual way of talking. One cannot change into the other. So more specifically, if we apply it to like the various levels of Buddhist practice advocated just within the Tibetan Buddhist context. In the Tibetan Buddhist context, there's tremendous emphasis on how you go through different stages. So there are stages of development. So sometimes when talking about these stages of development, some teachers, some traditions might say things like, for example, in the individual liberation level, at the individual liberation level, the Buddha taught his monks and nuns and even his lay practitioners, male and female. They're common, ordinary lay people, meaning they're not really that interested in Dharma practice. But then there's another category, another group, which is not just that they are lay people, they're not monks and nuns, they are lay practitioners. So I would say all of you are this second type of lay person, the lay practitioners, upasakas, upasikas. Sika is for women, and just the language, Sanskrit, Bali, upasakas and upasikas. Then there is lay people who are not that interested in Dharma practice. They're not against it, but they're just like, there's Dharma, But you, such as you guys, you are upasakas, upasikas. So you might hear, some people saying, the vows pertaining to that first level, such as you should not drink alcohol, you should not get intoxicated. That Buddha says, is not virtuous. But then when you get to Vajrayana, you're allowed to drink. That kind of view, Kyoba Rinpoche criticized and said, well, in that case, Buddha seems to be not very nice to monks and nuns, giving them all these rules, just making life difficult for them, If the Buddha is in the position to give sort of like a free pass, Go ahead and drink, no consequences. So if he's giving to this group, why isn't he giving to this group? He says, no. Equally, it is harmful to everyone. So that is this kind of the point of it cannot change. Don't kid yourself. And sometimes people say, oh, I like Vajrayana practice, I like Mahamudra, or I like Dzogchen. And you say, why? They're like, because, I don't have to relate to my anger, my desire as bad. Yes, on a deeper level, true. But most of the time, it just means you indulge in, you feed your anger, you feed your desire, and you say, oh, I'm Vajrayana practitioner. You're just kidding yourself, Then you get moody and angry, Then you think, this is Vajra, wrath. This means wrathful. I should practice wrathful deities. Or your issue is, I want. I want to experience this. I want to experience that. I like this experience. I like that experience. So a lot of desire, Then you say, oh, now I practice, Vajra Yogini, Vajra Varahi, where she is swirling and swirling with bliss and joy. When in fact, you're getting caught up in attachment and desire. And then you say, oh, I'm advanced practitioner. Kibara Rinpoche says, no. Desire is harmful at the beginning level. Desire continues to be harmful at the advanced levels. Right? It doesn't change. Now, the rhetorical question is raised. Next. Well then, what about yesterday's teaching? That when governed by bodhicitta, the three afflictions become a cause for unsurpassable awakening. So, Kibara Rinpoche said, I know, yesterday, right, I talked about this, so what about that? What do we do now? Now we can say, in a way, the plot thickens. The plot thickens. And I'm not going to say, I have a way to fully explain exactly what he means here. It's not so easy. I've looked at this a few times. And said, So at least you should also, I need to more practice experience to really understand his point here. So anyway, we will try, okay? So what about that? Just yesterday, you said, when governed by bodhicitta, then even the three afflictions become causes for unsurpassable awakening. Here is how he explains it. Desire, realized as. Realized can also be translated as actualized. Desire, realized or actualized as desire-free emptiness, is not unwholesome. It is wholesome. So here he seems to be saying, what I was talking about yesterday isn't saying desire as it is without you having certain understanding, certain realizations to it. Desire as it is a cause for awakening. No, but that when desire has turned up and you are able to, in the next moment, at the very least the next moment, if not the same moment when desire turns up, if in the next moment you can actualize this desire. In other words, as in you can realize the desire-free emptiness of this desire, then this so-called desire now is not unskillful, it has become skillful. Governed by relative bodhicitta, it becomes a cause for unsurpassable awakening. Now, you still need to be governed by relative bodhicitta, or directed by. 2 nights ago in the DDIS meeting, we talked about how the practice of Vajrasattva, to lay aside all your negative karma, all your habit patterns, of the negative habit patterns that create negative karma easily, you lay aside, which is what confession means in the practice of Vajrasattva. You lay aside, you put aside. So I talked about how, including, you need to put aside blaming yourself, you need to put aside feeling guilt, you need to put aside feeling embarrassed, you have to put aside self-blame. Even those things you need to put aside. You need to lay aside. But there I said, now, if you lay aside guilt, you lay aside embarrassment, you lay aside, feeling bad, right? But you don't have something else to fill the space that you have created by laying aside these things, then you become, dangerous. Because there is a reason for why we're wired to feel guilty, to feel embarrassed, right? Because if you just get rid of those things, then I don't know if I want to be your neighbor. No more guilt. No more restraint. No more regret. We sometimes hear people say, I refuse to live my life with regret. Well, depends on who you are, Some people we say, yes, very good. And then some people we can say, I don't think that's a good idea. Because you're constantly making bad choices. And you decide that, you're constantly making bad choices. And now you say, I am not going to live my life with regret. It's like, I don't know. For sure, I would not hire this person, if I was a boss. So it's not just the case, like when we practice Vajrasattva, we purify, we clear our guilt, we clear our, you can even say you clear your conscience. Again, if you clear your conscience and there's nothing else to be there, then it's not a good thing. But it is a good thing when you clear it, so that what occupies that space now is bodhicitta. And in this context, it says relative bodhicitta. And this is what it means, what it means by governed by relative bodhicitta. Now that desire, which is realized as desire-free emptiness, that is the it becomes a cause for unsurpassable awakening. So that it can now actually enhance your journey to awakening. This is its fundamental nature. It is not the case that something unwholesome turn into something wholesome. And so you can say, on the essence level, it's not that something unwholesome turns into wholesome. That emptiness nature has always been something skillful. And your realization allows that wholesomeness, that skillfulness, to manifest, to play out as something beneficial, as something helpful. Likewise, aversion and delusion, when they are realized as aversion-free and delusion-free emptiness, emptiness that is free of aversion, emptiness that is free of delusion, and governed by relative bodhicitta, so that realization of the aversion, of the emptiness that is free from aversion, the realization of the emptiness that is free of delusion, right? That's the ultimate bodhicitta aspect. When that ultimate bodhicitta is governed by relative bodhicitta, then those states turn into causes for perfect awakening. They are wholesome. This is why the power of truth manifested accomplishments in the case of King Indrabhuti and Lavapa. We talked about them yesterday. Realize as unborn emptiness, the three afflictions are wholesome. Otherwise, although loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta are wholesome, when the realization of their emptiness is lacking, and there is still fixation on concreteness, that non-realization and fixation on concreteness are delusional, and those delusions are unwholesome. Even love, compassion, and bodhicitta, when it is separated from an understanding grounded in emptiness, then they become unskillful. Also, when their emptiness is not realized, love, compassion, and bodhicitta don't result in becoming free from samsara. As it is taught, loving kindness and so forth, since they do not counter delusion or ignorance, they do not completely eradicate the faults of delusion. Since the view that realizes emptiness counters them, you should cultivate emptiness. You should cultivate a clear realization, a clear understanding that leads to a clear realization of the truth of emptiness. So just in case it's not clear, Kyoba says, compassion and bodhicitta are included in this so forth, loving kindness and so forth. On the relative level, the Dharma of the Tathagatas of all times is generally one, which is to abandon the 10 unwholesome deeds, practice the 10 wholesome, virtuous, skillful deeds, and to train in the 6 perfections of the bodhisattvas. So the 10 unwholesome is killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, that is the 3 of the physical, 4 of the verbal, deceptive speech, destructive speech, divisive speech, distracted speech. Deceptive, destructive, divisive, and distracted. That's 4 that pertains to 4 of the negative, unskillful speech. And 3 unskillful that pertains to the mind, to the heart, is a coveting mind, a resentful, angry mind, and a mind that is mistaken about especially how cause and effect works. A mind that denies cause and effect, does not understand cause and effect, and not just does not understand, but actively perverts karmic causality. That is the wrong, the delusion aspect. So these are the 10 non-virtuous actions, unskillful actions. Skillful is the opposite. Instead of killing, we protect, we preserve life. Instead of stealing, we cultivate giving. so on and so forth. So these are the 10 wholesome. Doing non-virtuous things while knowing that suffering arises from non-virtuous deeds is like consuming the most terrible poison, even when you know that it will kill you. Whereas poison will merely separate you from this body, non-virtuous actions will destroy well-being and happiness, not just this lifetime, but for many lifetimes. Therefore, make an effort to abandon unskillful deeds of body, speech, and mind. If the physical act of killing isn't abandoned, if the physical act of killing, if you don't stop that, if you don't put that down, it forms the cause for rebirth as a hell being. This means that you yourself should not kill, and also that you shouldn't commission someone else to kill. In some villages, they let other people come to do the slaughtering and commission them to kill. But it is said that by commissioning others to kill and rejoicing in it, the same fruition will be occurred. And so, asking someone to kill and rejoicing in it, then you also become involved in the cause of the direct cause of killing. The story of the Tathagata's previous life, when he lived as a Brahmin and rejoiced in the slaughter of fish, serves as an example. So in the story, it is actually said that the bodhisattva at the time had taken birth as a fisherman's son, not as a Brahmin. The result of his rejoicing in the slaughter of fish was that the Tathagata, then in that past life, then in the current life, had to endure severe headache, and that his clansmen were massacred at the end. So even after he achieved Buddhahood, the conditions still manifested. Moreover, it is necessary to abandon taking what is not given and sexual misconduct in order to stay compliant in conduct of the body. With speech, lying must be abandoned. If you don't stop lying, the fruition will be immense. It is said that a liar will be reborn as a tongueless being in hell. Moreover, slander, what I call divisive speech, idle talk, distracted speech, and harsh words, destructive speech, have to be abandoned in speech. In the mind, covetousness, malice, and wrong views have to be abandoned. Someone who doesn't abandon these 10 unwholesome deeds will roam in samsara's lower realms, and so on. But one who abstains, who abandons the 10 unwholesome deeds, will attain one of the 3 kinds of awakening in accordance with what they set forth to achieve, in accordance to what they seek. So on this point, the Dharma of the Buddhas of all times, past, present, and future, is the same, is one, is the same. This is also what must be kept by the fully ordained and the novices among the monastics. There's the 2 steps, first as a novice, then fully ordained. So he says, it doesn't matter. This 10 non-virtues is what needs to be abandoned. The 3 sets of vows are one in the point of abandoning the 10 non-virtuous deeds and practicing the 10 virtuous deeds. So this chapter, he kind of, almost like you could say, yesterday, he slightly opened the door for a more nuanced understanding of how non-virtuous actions, whether body, speech, or mind, so non-virtuous like thoughts or feelings, can become a cause for unsurpassable unsurpassed awakening. And then, fearing perhaps, that people might, again, misunderstand that statement, then today's teachings is focused on what it is not, what it does not mean. It does not mean, oh, okay, the 10 non-virtues now have become virtuous. So we're going to stop here, right in the middle like this, yes. So that means we call this a kind of deliberate unfinished business, so that by this we don't know, we could create the auspicious conditions for us to be gathered again to finish this unfinished business. Normally we would say, okay, let's go all the way to the end of this chapter, we're finished, Yes, that's one way, but in the tradition, there are often things like this. At the end, we say, let's leave some things unfinished. So culturally, I don't know if it is still practiced. I think older generation among Tibetans, and those who follow other surrounding areas, and people who follow the same customs. For example, when you are leaving, like leaving home, like for a long journey or something like that. So at the end, people might send you off, Of course, this is back in the day, right? When someone goes somewhere, the whole village would go to the airport, and maybe go an hour before, 2 hours before, Now people just on the curb, and like push you off the car and say, okay, bye-bye, off we go, But in the past, there are all these rituals, of like sending people off. And so in the Himalayan Tibetan, so you will drink tea together, right? But the person leaving, the last cup of tea, you should not drink all of it, they say. So it will always be filled to full. And then the person leaving leaves. So the meaning is, you have to come back and drink this cup of tea. Some unfinished business. And so then some also do things like don't say goodbye, So that means, not goodbye yet. Yeah. So anyway, maybe it creates a positive connection. So we're going to finish kind of right in the middle and say we have unfinished business, so that if conditions allow, we will all meet again and finish the business that is unfinished for now. Chanju Semcho Rinpoche Ma Ge Ba Nam Ge Gyurje Ge Ba Nyam Pa Me Ba Ya Go Ne Gong De Be Wan Sho. As for those of you who practice the Ladrup Ngondro, there is Ladrup Ngondro weekly practice tomorrow, Saturday, and also Monday evening. Whenever I can, I join. And then on Sunday morning at 9, I'm giving a talk. I posted on Facebook and also on WhatsApp. I'm giving a talk on karma. But that will be a talk to a predominantly Indonesian community, Zoom online community. So it will be translated into Indonesian. But you can join, if you have time and interest. The topic is on karma. Yeah. So, okay. Bye-bye.
Safe travels, Dr. Lai.
Yeah, thank you. So stay tuned. If you're on the DDIS WhatsApp group, then you're covered. Usually, I update people on what's going on there. And then if you're not on the DDIS because you're not participating as a DDIS member, then what you should do is you should go to you should join the Dr. Lai's programs WhatsApp group. You will also kind of, and then of course if you're on Facebook also I post updates there. So there could be a chance, in the next 2-3 months that I may do something, but I don't know. We have to see first. The transmission starts on October 10th. His Holiness's transmissions starts on October 10th. It goes through to December 15th. And the other day somebody said, so on the weekends, can we ... I said, look at the schedule. There are no weekends. It's every day. Potentially 8-hour days. Every day. From October 10th to December 15th. So that's why, His Holiness is one time in this life he has to do this, because he was obligated by his guru when he received this. And so I would say this is his most important act of Dharma transmission in this lifetime. And so, I don't know if we have at all any time to do anything on Zoom. So, but who knows, let's see. Okay, bye-bye.